I want you to picture the most beloved pranksters in modern fiction. Like, you probably immediately envisioned Fred and George Weasley.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they're the ultimate comic relief, right?
Right. The lovable rebels. They turn Hogwarts corridors into their own personal testing grounds.
Yeah, they mock authority at every single opportunity, and somehow they make even, like, blatant rebellion feel incredibly fun.
They really do. They represent this very specific sort of chaotic, good energy that we just naturally gravitate towards.
Exactly, because in a narrative that gets progressively heavier and darker, they act as this essential pressure valve.
Yeah, we are totally conditioned to cheer for them.
Yeah.
Because their brand of chaos is, well, it's usually directed at the antagonists.
Most of the time, yeah.
But today, the mission of this deep dive is to completely flip that script.
We are going there.
We're going there. We are peeling back the curtain on the twins' supposedly lighthearted chaos to examine the raw mechanics of their actions.
Because when you strip away the laugh track, and really look closely at the lore, you uncover moments where their behavior wasn't just mischievous.
No, it was downright dark.
Yeah.
Like sadistic and, frankly, borderline evil.
It really is. It's a profound shift in perspective.
It is. And if you thought you knew the Weasley twins, I mean, this deep dive is going to completely change how you view their so-called harmless pranks.
Because once you examine the actual magical theory behind the spells they were using and the potential consequences of those spells, the implications are genuinely chilling.
Totally chilling. The humor just masks this staggering level of recklessness.
It really does.
And if we want to understand the root of that recklessness, we have to look, like, way back, long before they were teenagers fighting a magical war.
Right, back to their childhood.
Exactly. This darkness started incredibly early, right in the living room of the Burrow. I mean, we need to talk about the incident with the unbreakable vow.
Oh, man. Yeah. To grasp the sheer horror of this childhood incident, you really need to break down the mechanics of what an unbreakable vow actually is.
Right, because this is not a pinky promise.
No. It is not a symbolic gesture of loyalty at all. It is a magically binding contract enforced by, the fundamental laws of the universe.
And the physical manifestation of it alone is intense. You have two people kneeling, facing each other, grasping their right hands.
And then a bonder has to touch a wand to those joined hands.
Yeah, and as the terms are spoken, this thin, brilliant tongue of flame shoots from the wand and winds around their hands like a glowing wire. It's literally a chain of magic.
A literal chain. And the mechanism of enforcement is what makes it so terrifying. When that magical chain binds you, it weaves the terms of the vow into your very life force.
Wow.
Yeah, it isn't just a spell resting on you. It alters your internal magical signature.
So what happens if you break it?
Well, if you act in defiance of the vow, you create this catastrophic magical paradox within your own body. The magic turns inward to resolve the broken contract, instantly terminating your life. I mean, you break it, you die.
Okay, so let's unpack this for a second, because the baseline we all use for this spell is, the moment Narcissa Malfoy begs Severus Snape to protect Draco.
Right, with Bellatrix Lestrange acting as the bonder.
Exactly. But that involves hardened adult combatants making a calculated life or death sacrifice.
Very true.
But according to the lore, this exact same lethal magic was attempted around 1985 on Ron Weasley.
Who was, 5 years old?
Yeah, only about 5 years old.
Right.
And Fred and George were maybe 7, and they actively coerced him into the ritual.
They literally had him kneeling. They had their hands clasped. They were in the middle of speaking the terms with a wand pressed to their hands when their father walked into the room.
I mean, this is the magical equivalent of finding your 7-year-olds playing Russian roulette with their toddler brother.
That is exactly what it is.
They had the gun loaded and they were spinning the cylinder. It's just entirely jarring to picture young children wielding something so absolute.
It is. And Arthur Weasley's reaction really sets the tone for how we should interpret this,
Oh, for sure. He is famously the calm, mild-mannered parent. The guy who tinkers with spark plugs in the shed.
Right, he never gets mad.
But Ron explicitly recalls that this was the absolute angriest he ever saw his father in his entire life. Arthur completely lost his temper.
Because Arthur's fury is the crucial metric here. He understood the proximity to tragedy.
Yeah, he knew how close they were.
But the mechanism of how the twins achieved this leaves us with a terrifying dichotomy. Think about the magical theory required to cast a spell of that magnitude. It forces us to ask what was actually happening in their heads.
Well, there are really only two ways to look at it, and neither is comforting.
No, neither is good.
The first possibility is that Fred and George, at 7 years old, possessed the innate, advanced magical comprehension to successfully bind a lethal contract to a 5-year-old.
Which is wild.
It's insane. If that's the case, we are talking about a staggering, savant-level capacity for dark magic at an age where most wizarding children are accidentally turning their toys different colors.
Exactly, which would imply a calculated, terrifying competence.
Right.
But if they didn't have that advanced knowledge, the alternative is almost worse.
How so?
Because it means they were blindly mimicking a lethal ritual without any concept of the trigger they were pulling. They just heard the words, saw the hand placements, and decided to try it out on their baby brother.
Ugh. It's the ultimate display of playing with loaded weapons.
Yeah.
I mean, if Arthur hadn't walked through that door at that exact millisecond, Ron would have been bound to a promise he didn't have the cognitive development to comprehend, let alone uphold.
He would have lived under a constant invisible guillotine.
Yeah, for the rest of his life.
The sheer disregard for the unknown is what stands out to me here. It establishes a behavioral pattern.
It really does.
We get so used to laughing at the explosive outcomes of their jokes that we completely ignore the hypothetical tragedies. And as they grew up, that childhood ignorance of dangerous magic didn't fade away.
No, it didn't.
It evolved. It weaponized.
And that's the scary part. Because if we can chalk up the unbreakable vow to childhood ignorance, we lose that excuse entirely as they get older.
We really do.
Because when they gained the magical maturity to understand consequences, they started intentionally subjecting people to highly volatile, unknown magic.
Right.
Which brings us to the vanishing cabinet incident with Montague.
Oh, this is the one. This specific event really dismantles the whole lovable prankster defense.
It really does.
It forces a hard look at where the line is drawn between, retaliation and actual torture.
So just to set the stage for you, Hogwarts is under the totalitarian thumb of the Inquisitorial Squad.
Right. Dark times.
Montague tries to dock Gryffindor points. And Fred and George grab him and shove him headfirst into a broken vanishing cabinet on the first floor.
Now, on the surface, a vanishing cabinet sounds like a stage magician's prop, right?
Yeah, like a magic trick.
But the mechanics of it are deeply, deeply complex. A working cabinet acts as a localized, permanent wormhole.
Okay.
It requires a twin cabinet to function, creating a spatial fold that links the two locations seamlessly. But the cabinet at Hogwarts had been severely damaged years prior. The spatial fold was broken.
Yeah, I always picture the broken cabinet like getting stuck inside the wiring of a transatlantic phone cable.
That's a great analogy.
You aren't at the origin and you aren't at the destination.
Yeah.
Your physical body is just trapped as raw signal data in the dark.
Exactly.
Montague didn't pop out somewhere else. He was suspended in a literal magical void between Hogwarts and Borgin and Berks in Nocturne Alley.
And the psychological horror of that environment is immense. I mean, think about it. He was in complete sensory deprivation, overlaid with spatial isolation.
Unimaginable.
Sometimes he could hear the students at school, sometimes he could hear the dark wizards in the shop, but he couldn't interact with either. He was basically a ghost in the machine.
Just floating there.
With no food, no water, and no concept of time passing.
And after weeks of this, out of pure survival instinct, Montague tries to apparate out.
Which is wow.
And the physical mechanics of apparition make that an almost suicidal choice from within a void.
Completely. Apparition requires 3 things, right? Destination, determination, and deliberation.
Right. The 3 Ds.
You have to fix your mind on a highly specific coordinate in physical space to pull your physical form through the magical dimension. But Montague was trying to lock onto a destination while his origin point was mathematically undefined in the physical world.
Right.
He was in nowhere, trying to go somewhere.
It's a miracle he didn't completely splice his physical form into atoms.
Seriously.
He barely survives, reappearing wedged inside the Hogwarts plumbing, completely delirious and requiring long-term intensive medical care. Now, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Okay, go for it.
I want to push back on classifying this as pure evil. Because Montague was an enforcer for a fascist regime operating inside a school.
True.
He was actively hunting students, like the Quins. So, in the context of guerrilla warfare against an oppressive system, wasn't this a justified tactical move? Like, they took a hostile piece off the board.
Yeah, and the narrative absolutely invites you to view it that way.
Yeah.
The immediate emotional payoff of seeing an oppressor defeated makes us want to cheer. But we have to separate the victim's morality from the perpetrator's sheer recklessness.
Okay, Fair.
Taking an enemy off the board usually involves stunning them, disarming them, or binding them.
Yeah, standard dueling tactics.
I didn't do that. They forced a human being into a fractured magical artifact with absolutely zero understanding of its internal physics. They didn't know if it would shred him, suffocate him, or erase him from existence entirely.
And they showed zero remorse for those variables. I mean, when Hermione confronts them about it, warning them about the massive trouble they'll be in, Fred literally brushes it off.
Yep.
He laughs and says, "Not until Montague reappears, and that could take weeks. I don't know where we sent him."
And that casual dismissal is the crux of the issue. Intent matters, sure, but at a certain point, extreme recklessness crosses the line into sadism.
Yeah, it really does.
They were completely comfortable with the idea that a fellow student might be slowly starving to death in an unknown magical dimension. They locked a human being in magical isolation with no confirmed way out, and they found it funny.
It's just a casual disregard for human life.
Exactly.
And the irony is that casual cruelty comes back to haunt the entire wizarding world.
Oh, it really does.
Because this act doesn't happen in a vacuum. It triggers a massive, devastating chain reaction.
It is the ultimate butterfly effect. Because Montague was trapped in that specific spatial limbo, he was able to hear both ends of the broken connection. He realized the cabinet at Hogwarts was tethered to the one in Borgin and Burke's. Once he recovered, he took that exact piece of intelligence directly to Draco Malfoy.
And Draco was desperately searching for a way to smuggle an army into the castle.
Right, he was stuck.
The twins literally handed him the blueprints. That single piece of information allows Draco to spend his entire 6th year repairing the spatial fold, which directly enables the Death Eater invasion of Hogwarts.
Which is wild to think about.
Fred and George's desire to punish a hall monitor indirectly facilitated a massive terrorist attack on the safest stronghold in the wizarding world.
It perfectly illustrates why playing with unknown, volatile magic for a laugh is fundamentally dangerous. You cannot control the blast radius of a broken spell.
You really can't. It completely reframes how you look at their ingenuity. Which perfectly brings us to the most systemic issue.
Yeah, we have to talk about the shop.
We really do. We've gone from a childhood near miss to teenage revenge to young adults fully commercializing dark magic. We have to examine Weasley's wizard wheezes and specifically the love potions.
This is perhaps the most ethically unsettling aspect of the entire lore, particularly when you analyze the magical theory of love in this universe.
Let's lay the groundwork with Gamp's law of elemental transfiguration. Okay. This is a foundational rule of magic that dictates what can and cannot be conjured or altered. You can't conjure food out of thin air, you can't conjure money, and you cannot create true life.
Right.
But the most powerful exception, the magic that transcends Gamp's law entirely, is love.
Because true love is an ancient fundamental force. It is the specific magic that deflects the killing curse. It is untouchable by a wand.
Exactly.
Therefore, whatever is inside a love potion is emphatically not love.
The most famous example is Amortentia. It's described as the most powerful love potion in existence. You recognize it by its mother-of-pearl sheen and the steam that rises in these characteristic spirals.
Yeah.
But the most insidious mechanic is the scent. It smells differently to every single person, mimicking whatever they find most attractive. It lowers your defenses before you even consume it.
And once consumed, the effects are deeply disturbing. I mean, it operates like a magical, localized lobotomy.
Wow, a lobotomy.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
It severs the brain's critical thinking center and replaces it with a highly programmed synthetic directive. It creates an erratic, highly volatile, artificial obsession. It entirely strips away the drinker's autonomy.
We see the mechanics of this firsthand when Ron accidentally eats those spiked chocolate cauldrons.
Oh, that scene is terrifying.
It is. The potion wasn't even meant for him. It was brewed by Romilda Vane for Harry. When Ron ingests it, he doesn't just get a mild crush. His pupils dilate, his personality is completely overridden, and he becomes physically volatile.
Yeah.
Harry literally has to wrestle him to the floor to stop him from running off.
Which raises a massive structural question about how the wizarding world categorizes magic.
Wayne?
Well, the Imperious Curse is classified as an unforgivable curse, right? Carrying a mandatory life sentence in Azkaban. Specifically because it removes a person's free will and forces them to act against their own consent. A love potion achieves the exact same violation of consent, just through a chemical vector rather than a wand flick.
Wow. Yeah, it's basically chemical coercion.
Exactly.
And if you look at the macro scale of the lore, we know exactly what happens when you build a foundation on that coercion. The origin of Lord Voldemort traces directly back to this.
It does.
Merripick Gaunt used the love potion to enslave an affluent muggle, Tom Riddle Sr. She chemically forced him into a physical relationship.
And the lore heavily implies that because Tom Riddle was conceived under the influence of an artificial, coercive potion rather than genuine human connection, he was born fundamentally incapable of understanding or feeling empathy.
Right.
The greatest dark wizard of the age was literally birthed from the trauma of magical consent violation. Love potions are not harmless gags. They are world-breaking dark magic.
And knowing all of that magical theory, knowing the history, we arrive at the massive cognitive dissonance of Weasley's Wizard Wheezes.
Yeah.
Fred and George open a wildly successful joke shop in Diagon Alley. And right there on the shelves, right alongside the skeeving snack boxes and trick wands, they mass-produce, aggressively market, and sell love potions.
They are actively commercializing the removal of human autonomy.
I mean, let's put this in the starkest terms possible. They're basically selling beautifully packaged mind control roofies to emotionally immature teenagers in a gag shop.
It is an incredibly dark reality to face. In any functional society, chemically altering someone's mind to force intimacy or affection is a profound criminal violation.
Obviously.
Yet Fred and George treat it as a lucrative impulse purchase. They package it in bright colors and market it to adolescents.
And the wizarding culture just, accepts it.
Yeah, they do.
The lore constantly treats girls giggling over love potions as this normal, annoying part of teenage life. But Fred and George aren't just passive participants in a flawed culture. They are the suppliers. They are the ones scaling up the operation.
And it completely warps the brand identity we associate with them.
It really does.
The ethos of Weasley's Wizard Wheezes is that magic should bring joy, especially in dark times. But by shelving Amortentialite next to Fainting Fancies, they're categorizing the violation of a person's free will as a prank.
Wow.
And if a prank requires taking away someone's ability to consent, it fundamentally ceases to be a prank. It becomes abuse disguised as humor.
That is the immense tension we have to sit with here. We give them a pass because they fight the Death Eaters, because they provide levity, and because they are, undeniably charismatic.
Right.
But they are profiting from the ability to take away someone else's choice.
It forces us to confront the blind spots we develop as an audience. We heavily compartmentalize their actions.
Okay.
We put their bravery and the fireworks in one box, and we conveniently file away the systemic violations of consent in another simply because we like them.
It paints a completely different picture when you lay the timeline out, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
We've traced this escalating arc. They started at age 7, nearly binding their toddler brother to a lethal magical contract because they didn't respect the trigger they were pulling.
Right.
They grew into teenagers who casually tortured a classmate by locking him in a sensory deprivation void, indifferent to whether he lived or died.
Yeah.
And then they matured into businessmen who mass-produced and sold magical coercion to minors for a profit.
It is a clear trajectory of moral decay. They began with a reckless disregard for magical consequences, escalated to a callous disregard for human suffering, and ultimately arrived at a capitalist disregard for fundamental consent.
It's a really heavy realization to process. And I think that's the ultimate challenge for you, the listener, today. Think about how often we forgive terrible, genuinely damaging actions in the media we consume just because the character happens to be wearing the same colors as the protagonist.
It's the halo effect. We decide a character aligns with the good guys, and therefore we excuse behavior that we would immediately, vehemently condemn if it were performed by an antagonist.
Which leaves us with a final, provocative thought for you to mull over. If lovable, inherently good characters like Fred and George Weasley see absolutely nothing wrong with trapping their peers in a horrifying magical limbo or selling literal mind control potions to children in a joke shop.
Yeah.
What does that say about the baseline morality of the entire wizarding world compared to our own?
It strongly suggests a society that is fundamentally desensitized to the violation of human rights, so long as the violation is executed with a wand and a smile.
It really makes you reconsider who you are cheering for. The next time you picture the most beloved pranksters in modern fiction causing lighthearted chaos, maybe take a much closer look at the mechanics of what they're actually doing. Until next time.